Well, good morning, everybody. As we get into this Friday, the main goal here this week is to just finish wrapping up the story we've been developing all week about this pattern. And once again, we've seen another very large low that has just missed the northeast coast, right? These continue to form offshore and stay pretty far downwind and not affecting the east coast. We have another clipper that's moving through the Great Lakes, and the source of the low is a little bit farther to the north, but here it is again. We're going to watch for more snow in this area. And then, of course, the west has been so very stagnant, so very mild for quite some time. But we're looking for this upstream change in the pattern, and we got to see when it's going to get here and how it's going to get here. So let's go through this. All right, early this morning, the temperature is still very cold in the northeast. This was well-anticipated shot of very cold air. And as it comes through, pay attention to the warm-up that's happening on the backside of it. I'm kind of early this morning at 4:40 a.m. We've got temperatures in the 40s and 50s climbing through parts of the plains. If we look at the satellite data, we can see the radar data. So we can see some of the snow that moved through parts of Wisconsin, lower Michigan, into clipping parts of Illinois, Indiana. And this morning, we're going to keep an eye out on this region for the risk of some more snow. You see some interesting artifacts on the radar, by the way, this morning. We have some occasional just blocked beams that are over here in Nevada. And you can see a big test pulse that came out of Colorado. Again, these are just radar artifacts that happen all the time. Just generally when they're sent to your app that you like to use, it's all cleaned out, so we just don't see it. You can also tell there's a pretty strong inversion in the southern plains this morning as you start to see all the brighter specks here early in the morning, which are showing the wind towers, the wind farms. And the beam, as it gets ducted into the lower atmosphere, you can see that. I don't want to ignore the moisture that is trying to move through parts of Southern California, but this is a much bigger change coming for California in this near-term pattern. But right now, we've got winter weather advisories, we've got extreme cold warnings, we've got the wind issues across parts of the east as the clipper comes racing through. And the thing is that you're going to see here in this forecast is we're about to take all of this, which has been occupying the eastern half of the country, and put it back in the west. It's going to take some time, but the models have been consistent all week with this thought process, so we're just going to give you the latest today, all right? I want to show you the high-res NAM just to get us started, and here we go through this morning, getting into early afternoon right here, and then into the evening. And so again, we've got snow that's coming out of the Ohio Valley into the northeast. It's going to go over parts of Virginia, and then get into, West Virginia, getting into Virginia, and even parts of North Carolina. We do have to run the risk or be aware of the risk that early this morning there could be some ice that's going to be on the southern side of this as it comes through. And then we're going to spread this by the time we get into tonight on Friday night into early Saturday morning. Possibly a little lake effect left over, some snow showers in the northeast. But there's a front trying to hit parts of the Pacific Northwest. And this is Saturday mid-afternoon. So we have some more moisture coming into the west, but this isn't the big show that we're going to keep an eye on. Again, another little clipper system coming through. So there's just been several of these coming through for quite some time. Total snow, we'll just look at this really quickly here in the high-res NAM. These snowfall amounts, unless you're up against the Appalachian Mountains, are generally under 4 inches. All right, so we see 2 to 3 inches possible in this area. Right up against the Appalachian Mountains, we could have some higher amounts, and also coming off of the tip of Erie and the broadside of Ontario there as well. All right, one last thing. I want to show you these wind gusts because we are concerned about these winds. And as we play this through, take note that the reason why the high wind watches are out for this region is coming off the mountains. We're looking at gusts 40 to 60 miles an hour. All right, there's also going to be some stronger winds in the plains. But these winds are going to be associated with a major warm-up that's going to be taking shape here in the near term. So what we're deviating from is this. I went back to 12/1, so the very beginning of winter. I said, just show me the jet stream. And we've been looking at this all week, but what it's been is a retracted jet that splits off the west. This is promoted especially after we got past the end of December, beginning of January, where there was very wet conditions in the west, all right? We got back into a very dry pattern. It's been dry in the southern tier of the United States. Yes, even though there was a snowstorm that went through here, it's still been dry in this area. That snow, just remember, snow doesn't have a lot of water in it. And so that's why we continue to see this. And we've had our deepest pockets of cold air coming out of the Arctic, rolling through the Canadian prairie, and then ending up in the Great Lakes region and east. Right now, we've had times where this has made it pretty far to the south, and I'm sure a lot of you saw some reports of a freezing temperature in Cuba that was reported. But if you're asking what is changing, it's going to be this map. And so where did this map land us? I've been showing this all week. Like, here is our December 1st through yesterday precipitation ranks. And we have discussed at length what's going on in the Colorado Rockies, the headwaters on the Platte River system, how dry we've been here in the Mid-South and broader area all the way to the Mid-Atlantic and even back into western Texas. Florida's been drier as well. And just recently, we've seen so much of the western states go very, very dry too. Our soil moisture across major river systems like the Missouri, the Ohio, and much of the Central and Mississippi River here are still incredibly low. But how dry this past month has been has driven a lot of has driven the soil moisture values down in parts of Northern California, the Willamette Valley, the Columbia Basin. And I know it doesn't reflect well on this map, but this Golden Triangle area, very dry too. You can also see along the Gulf Coast, we've just been lacking in moisture, and there's been some improvement here after the snow has melted. That was one spot that could benefit, but a lot of the rest of the Carolinas into northern Georgia are still pretty short on soil moisture. Our drought monitor continues to reflect this, and the newest update seen here, released yesterday, still keeps better than 2/3 of the country in some form of drought, from abnormally dry all the way up to exceptional drought. But it's over these last 10 weeks where, this is our winter so far. I want you to see the class changes that we've experienced. And a lot of places throughout the plains, getting into this whole section of the southern plains in the Mid-South and the Delta, and then in the Southeast, including a lot of Florida, just continues to build in drought. So why we're watching for something different, I'm talking about something different from this, is that to cure those incredibly dry areas, it's going to start with the jet stream pattern change, okay? One other thing I want to point out here before we really dig into this, if you look at the current snow water equivalent map, we've already melted quite a bit of this, and more is going to be melting as the temperatures warm up. In fact, we do anticipate a lot of all of this to melt, even though we're going to be adding more snow into this area going forward today into early tomorrow. But my biggest concern is just how broad of an area in the Mississippi, part of the Mississippi Basin, but a lot of the Missouri River Basin and other tributaries that feed into the Mississippi, how little snow they have on them at this particular time of the year. And the West, the West is very, very dry. There's no other way around it. Just have to see how much moisture is missing in that area. Now, as I think it through, all right, in fact, I thought I had another slide. Oh, here it is. I jumped over it. I apologize. Just to show you how dry the West is. That's the last 30 days. Most of the West is measured no precipitation in the last 30 days, or very, very little maybe in this part of Washington or this part of Montana. All right. Now let's get into this. Here is the pattern shift, but the concern in the pattern shift. All right. I loved seeing troughs return to the west, but there is an upstream block. See it? High over low. There's a downstream block, high over low. And what I'm worried about is that leaves the trough over the west, and they fail to eject effectively across the country. Now, I was pretty excited about seeing them eject. I think they will. I just don't think they're going to have the pure potency that a western trough can deliver in mid-February of just ripping out of the west and making big storm systems in the central U.S. But the problem is the amplitude of the ridge right ahead of it. So these systems will come in, they'll run into that ridge and fail to press through it effectively. I think that's what the problem is going to be if the pattern looks like this. But still, there's some good stuff with this pattern. Let me go show you the 300 millibar winds. So now we're looking up here, jet stream level. We're trying to figure out where these winds are going to go. And this is it. See, the jet for a long time has just got about this far, didn't hit the west, so it's doing this. There's your big ridge. There's a lot of warm air over here, a lot of cold air tucked into this. And what we see in the pattern, if I play this forward, is getting into this weekend, Saturday into Sunday. Look at the better flow we see into the northwest. That's when that frontal boundary comes into Washington and Oregon. We then keep playing it forward, and I get out there to Tuesday. Remember, we've been talking about the 10th, 11th, 12th. This is the reason why. Look, we're now doing that. In fact, it's kind of curling over the top here. If we just keep going beyond this, I'm now up to February 12th and the 13th. And now we start to see, well, there's a ridge here. And so the trough is plunging through, and there's flow coming back into the western states. And what we're waiting to see is if any of these extensions of the jet stream, where they're really speeding up like this one, out there in the 16th, 17th, and 18th. Boy, if we can just get flow to come through like this, we're gonna rip off some systems. Now, you know that I was watching very carefully. Let's take you back here, like this time period. February 10th, 11th, 12th. We talked about it all week. The jet right now, as you see the orientation, it's got this positive tilt to it, which means it's digging into California. If this was really going to kick off a big system in the midsection of the country, let me redraw it for you. I'd want to see it doing something like that. Let's either get it some neutral tilt or some negative tilt to fully open the Gulf and start to hit this area with some moisture. As it stands, let's go have a look at what the model is predicting in terms of precipitation type and intensity. We'll zoom in here just a little bit to see this more focused on the U.S. So plane forward, there's our clipper going through the northeast. There's the frontal boundary. You saw it on the jet stream winds hitting the northwest. We have the little cutoff low. There is just a little cutoff low here that moved out into Texas. What it went, Saturday into Sunday. See it coming out of New Mexico into Texas. But that's about it. Another clipper goes through the Great Lakes. Better system comes into the northwest. But this is February 9th, 10th, and 11th. Remember, at that time, there was a more coherent pattern of a larger storm system in the midsection of the country. Well, with the jet stream doing something like this, we have this open, almost baroclinic leaf type feature with the broader trough in the back, putting more snow here through the Rocky Mountains, all right? So these two things aren't working together. And so all week long, we thought we'd have a big system by the time we got into Thursday of next week into Friday, and the models have kind of washed that out. This is next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But the pattern didn't give up. You still saw more troughs, and so we get out there the Valentine's Day. We get out there into the 15th and 16th. Ready? Look at the size of the system coming into the west. Watch it try to eject into the central United States. I'm not saying that this is going to cure all of our drought problems by mid-February or to the end of February, but it's a change in the right direction. And that's what I want you to understand. We have seen so much flow like this, and now we're finally getting something coming through. It's just whether or not these storm systems can keep going through is going to be the challenge. So let's go ahead and add up. Let's look at snow first, and then we'll look at total accumulated precipitation. So you can see the lighter amounts this weekend going into the parts of the eastern Corn Belt and the northeast, generally speaking 1 to 4 inches of snow. Then the system that hits the northwest, more for the Cascades and Northern Rockies. We've got to get more snow into these basins. We then watch by the 11th and 12th the system that comes out here, but remember it's kind of a disconnected system. That's why you don't see it spreading widespread bigger snows across the midsection of the country, but possibly some for Wyoming. This is part of the upper Colorado Basin, getting out into South Dakota, maybe northern Iowa, Minnesota. But we just got to play it through once we get out there past Valentine's Day. Okay, maybe we're just seeing this starting to fill in. And we've got time. We've got February to kind of fill this whole pattern in. And I hope with all my heart that this does come true in this area. That's a huge part of the headwaters of the Missouri Basin that need to get that snow on the ground, melted and put it back into the system. We also need more snow here. We've talked extensively about what's going on in the Platte River system. We also need to add up more for the Cascades here and the Sierra Nevada and much of the Intermountain West. So this pattern shift, if we can get it to come in, is critical. Now, let's go look at the total precipitation side of this. So this is QPF, Quantitative Precipitation Forecast from the European model. Here we go. All right. So that gets us out to the 10th, 11th, and 12th. There might be the risk of some storms down here with that first system. Again, that's next Thursday. But the more potent wave tries to come out here on the, let's call it 15th, 16th, 17th. And the only problem with this forecast as I see it, that's 15 days out, and the models still haven't filled this in. We're drier in Florida. We're drier up the coast. We're still dry throughout parts of the Canadian prairie. There's snow in between, but this, we got Kansas with nothing. So as I look at it, over the next 7 days, this is the probability of going or staying under 1/10 of an inch of liquid equivalent. And we're still over the next 7 days waiting for these waves to eject, but we're bringing up the amounts in the west. There's our clippers coming through this section of the Great Lakes and Northeast. And as I go past 1 week and just add those final days on to get you out to day 10, there is some shrinking of that area. But this is not the hopeful signal that I thought we saw earlier in the week. You go out full 10 days and there's still a 50 to 80% chance that this region doesn't pick up anything. And that's going to be the concern going forward. But out there into week 2, we do see that the Climate Prediction Center has started to increase the risk of heavy snow in the Cascades and the Sierra Nevada. And a lot of the Rockies, which we've been discussing all week, is desperately needed. And they're also putting out there the risk of heavy precipitation along the coast And they're going to keep an eye out on this part of the Mid-South, Kentucky, Tennessee, all the way to the Appalachian Mountains. All right. What I do like to see is that week 2 pattern still in all of our models is beginning to just wake things up. Let's zoom in on the European and get flow. Can you kind of see it doing something like that? It's just a difference. That's all we can say about this. And that should have been the caution in my voice all week long, although I'm afraid to tell you that earlier in the week I was more excited about this pattern than I am right now. All right, so that's the newest update from the European model. Okay, what about temperatures? Well, we've talked at length about the heat that's coming in. Very cold Saturday in the Northeast, but look at the warmth coming off the mountains here into the plains. 50s, 60s, 70s. This is Sunday's high temperatures. I mean, we've got 60s in Montana, almost 70 in parts of South Dakota, 70 in Kansas. And we watch this on Monday into Tuesday, spread farther to the east. I got Des Moines at 58 according to the National Digital Forecast Database on Tuesday. And we want to watch. We just want to see the west go over colder. But as we look out there in these models, I want to make sure I show you this one. This is your next 5 days. I'm hoping day 5 through 10, we trend colder in this pattern. That would just give more amplitude to that trough and maybe help it eject and erode the ridge. But look at the effectiveness of the ridge that's developing as we approach the middle of the month. This is why these systems are struggling to get through and maybe taking more of a northerly tier track because they got to go around that ridge. This is day 10 through 15, and I'm hoping that the end of February drops cold, and we start to see the return of some colder air in this region as well. Okay. The snowmelt with that warm-up, though, looks something like this. As I play this forward in the European model, getting into the weekend, this is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and that's when the real warmth starts to spread east. And there you go. You see that a lot of the snow that was in Missouri, Iowa, Indiana, Illinois is going to melt. Same thing for parts of Kentucky. And then in Ohio, with the warm-up that's happening out there around the 15th, 16th, 17th, and then we're adding snow here and in the west. That's a snow depth change map. All right. Okay, this is my analog package. We've talked about this a lot, and this is what Matt and Andrew and I have kind of settled in on, 18, 14, and 09 right now. When you look at all of February to March, I've highlighted on the left your wetter and drier regions. And on the right, the temperature pattern. I do not think we are done accessing this cold air despite the major warm-up that's happening in this region going forward. Okay, so yes, the temperature pattern always does this, but it fluctuates. But I think we have access to colder air here. All right. So to see it in the models, this is the next week. I like the GFS simulation on this. That's week 2. But by week 3, you see it coming back here? Now, how long does this region hang on to the mild air? That's going to be the question, because mild and dry are the recipe here. We then see week 4. This now gets us into early March. And so I still think we could find ourselves accessing this colder air through this region. And let's go out there to week 5. That gets you all the way out there to like March 10th, 11th, 12th. So there's still something to this pattern doing something like that. Let's go and look at the GFS 30-day outlook on precip through March 12th. Yeah, this model has been so aggressive at hitting the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes with wetter conditions. It's got a drier signal through here and in the southeast. What about the European outlook on this? Same time period, European weeklies. It's very similar. Did you notice not much change, just more expansive on the dryness here, not as aggressive on the wet in this area, but still wetter than average. And if you look at that, I mean, does it not look like, this? That's why I think these analogs are pretty solid. Now, I base these analogs off the fact that we have a decaying La Nina, and the upper level height pattern plus the polar vortex position was very similar in 09, 18, and 14, especially 14. Over the last week or so, this continues to erode and very, very mild or warm water as it merged here. In fact, look at the 7-day change. We've had some of the temperatures here go up 2 to 3 degrees in Niño region 1+2. The newest European model, which Matt talked about yesterday, is now much, much more aggressive on where it thinks the El Niño could be by summer. And the model is, I'm very aggressive. Understand that if we get up to 2 degrees, that's a super Niño. That's a powerful one. So the range is still large, but the trend is undeniable. We're going in this direction. Maybe by May is when we're thinking that we could have INSO positive, or what we call El Niño conditions, back across the Equatorial Pacific. And I think the trade winds will behave accordingly. So let's just see what the models have done with this. And so Matt showed these yesterday, but I'm going to do just a little bit of I want to add on to his thought process. I want to actually take you back to the model run that was initialized in November, predicting March, April, and May precipitation. Now, these are the wetter colors and these are the drier. Now let's do this. Let's go from the November run to the December run. Again, it's predicting March, April, May. Let's go from the December run to the January run. March, April, May. And then here's the newest. And I've noticed one very consistent theme. It's got this corridor wetter, and it's got that corridor wetter. It's got drier in California, drier in parts of the plains, and drier in the south and east. Now, the reason I did that is because sometimes the new seasonal runs are very much influenced by their initial conditions. But you just watch 4 months of initial conditions, and it continues to bite into this look. And as Matt showed yesterday, this new model run takes us all the way out to the heart of summer. And it's just got storms galore here. Now, that's just the model. We can't just take it at face value. That's what we have to do. What I want to remind you is that if we do get into an El Nino situation by summer, that wet condition that you saw down there in maybe Mexico and Texas, we could run the risk of dryness here. And when that happens, we tend to get a lot of storms that run around the edge. Now, these correlations are not strong. They're strong here. They're up to almost 0.5. But I want to be clear that El Nino is not just like this, pure indicator of having ridge riders all summer in that corridor. But the only places that I can definitively use this would be to see a weaker Indian monsoon and also much drier conditions across Indonesia. That is a strong enough signal to use this as a predictor. We also look here and tend to see that this suppresses the hurricane season. This is June to September, by the way. So don't forget that's what we're possibly looking at should this unfold into an El Nino, like we think it will. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about is just the narrative about South America. Even though we saw bigger storms come into this area, over the last 30 days we've been drier in Argentina, drier in pockets of southern Brazil. We can watch the animation of those storms, though. Watch this again as it resets here. There's the big storm of the 4th. We now get into the 5th, isolated severe storms here. This is early this morning, a storm complexes across the north. And I'm going to show you the GFS. I've showed you the European all week, but I want you to see the agreement. The next 7 days are here. That's 10 days out. That's fully into week 2. So I expect rapid harvest progress here and putting rain on top of some very, very dry ground in parts of Argentina and southern Brazil. It's been a very consistent signal in the models all week. All right, that is it. Please be safe this weekend. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks.